Hey y'all, I'm Tiffany Easterbrook, and welcome to the Let It Out interview series, where we talk about ways to support neurodivergent children and their families through connection, not control. Today I'm here with Tony Kibler. Tony is a BCBA and a certified behavioral sexologist. He specializes in relationships and sexuality within the neurodivergent community. He's currently working towards his CBSC, expanding into work with couples and non-neurodivergent individuals. Tony also has training in ACT, and he really believes in supporting people through connection and understanding rather than control, which aligns so much with the work that I'm doing as well. Tony has been a mentor to me in the field and played a big role in my growth as a behaviorist, and I'm really excited for y'all to hear from him today. Welcome, Tony.
Hello. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I feel like I don't deserve all the crazy accolades that go there. Just kind of like, this is what I do.
It
So,
is what you do. Um, so you work with neurodivergent individuals in a really unique space, especially around relationships and sexuality. And I want to know, how did you get into this work? What sparked that interest?
well, I first got into the work as far as just working within the neurodivergent realm in college. I worked at a preschool autism pod with a nonverbal 5-year-old diagnosed with autism. And, I was in college. I hadn't worked within that realm at all. I just taken some psych classes and eventually got to the point where it's like, oh, you could go do this and earn some credits for it. So I did a semester working in a preschool. And again, I think I was the only guy again in that class, let alone I think on that floor, to be perfectly honest. um, and it was just a lot of fun. I'm like, wait a second, we can get paid to do this? All I did was like, we're doing DTT style trials, and again, it was a preschool autism pod. But I tried to make it a lot more fun. So one of the things is reinforcement is we'd like kick a ball underneath the chair. And when I kick it between his legs underneath the little desk, I'd go goal. And it was probably about 2 months in. I just kicked the ball and I was writing data and I didn't say my normal like goal. And all of a sudden I heard from across the table, goal. And I'm like, "Wait, that that come out of you?" And get the ball again and like do like the like kick, like, are you gonna do it again? And he said, That time he did even goal." So here's this kid, like first word that I was aware of, and again, parents, don't have as much interaction. Like all I knew was nonverbally, never talked in school before. All of a sudden, there for first word. So it was really cool. I think that what kind of hooked me. And then eventually I had gone back and did some other jobs after college, and then had a friend who moved out to California to do film school. And I was living in Detroit at the time. And there weren't a whole lot of jobs. It was about 2004, like, crazy housing crash and recession and everything else. And drove out to California with him to go to film school. And I saw Centers for Autism and Related Disorders. And I'm like, there's actually companies that do this. So I was like, okay. So like, he set them all up at school, and I ended up flying back to Michigan, and then, 2 weeks later, I applied online to several different places, CARD, another one called California Psych Care, a couple other places, and I got a interview over the phone, and they're like, "You have a degree in psychology and a specialization in ABA?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's my Western Michigan only did ABA." Um, or it was clinical. It was like either or. And they're like, "You need to come out here." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So ended up driving to California about a week later by myself, drove across the country, packed up everything in my car, and was like, "All right, I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna get a job here and make it happen." Worked at California Psych Care for 9 years, went from direct staff to program supervisor to area supervisor to special projects manager. Um, and it was unique in that, again, being a guy in the field, always got pulled into the craziest questions. Given, primarily I call them kiddos, but again, I worked with all ages. And I don't mean to be pedantic or, uh, try to insult in any way, but it was just how we kind of known. But it was like, well, it's a boy and he does this. Is that normal? I'm like, just because I am also a boy, I'm now the authority on this thing or this behavior or how this happens. So, it just kinda came about, it got pulled into a lot of conversations just being a guy,
Yeah.
in this field. It was 90% male clients and 90% female staff.
Mhm.
So, got pulled into all kinds of questions. So, I'm big into research, so I ended up researching stuff and had to learn all different things and how to design behavior programs and this and that. And then finally, it's about 3 or 4 years ago, I came across the SBA, or sexual behavior analysis, and I was like, "This is interesting. There's actually people who realize that there's a need," um, and contacted the program through Empowered in St. Louis, and was like, "Okay, how does this all work?" And explained that, hey, BCBAs are one of the only people or groups of professionals that are used to working within the neurodivergent realm.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole bunch of sexual educators who have no idea how to work with neurodivergent.
No.
And there
It'd be a
wasn't a
disaster.
bringing together of both. And what I was finding is, like, I was doing a lot of education just because a lot of the clients I was working with never had sex ed. Like, they never wasn't ever brought, they were in special day class, so was never talked about. It was anatomy was never talked about.
Yeah.
Relationships were never talked about. And it was funny because every single parent's, like, their biggest concern at one point was like, are they gonna find love? Are they gonna have a relationship? But, oh god, what if they have children? It's like, we might wanna educate them on how
Yeah.
this all works if those 2 ideas are gonna come together in any way. Um, so it was, the program was 90 hours of CEUs, so all kinds of CEUs. CEUs you cannot watch on a plane. Every or in public
We
or at the
didn't try that,
office.
did we?
I it was I was at the office doing it, and I'd be like, "I have to close the door on this one." Um, and and once I started opening up and talking about a lot of this stuff, it was surprising how many parents were like, "This is so needed." And I'd be like, I thought I was gonna be like the freak, like, "Let's talk about the neurodivergence in
Yeah.
sex." Like, what are we're gonna teach them how to do it? And like, no, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's even just talk about why is, and it was funny, it's like, even end up doing a lot of education even with parents, because there's just a lot of misinformation about anatomy, roles, gender, ideas, all these different things. And in the neurodivergent population, there usually isn't, there's a spectrum there, but there's not because there's not a lot of social interaction. That's the idea of sexuality is rather fluid. Like, we're noticed a lot weren't falling predominantly only in heterosexual or homosexual or somewhere in between. Um, and trying to navigate that, and helping, parents, hey, nonverbal adults, as far as how to navigate certain aspects of their body and education and safety, um, and trying to reduce, like, overall, like, especially in higher functioning kids, depression and suicide and crime rates are like 7 times the neurotypical population. Depression and suicide rates, especially in we have, autism, neurodivergent, and getting into sexuality and gender, would puts them into this area that increased anxiety, increased depression, increased chances of self-harm, um, and or being harmed by others, like they being
Sure.
the victims of crimes.
Yeah.
Um, so, that it was a real need. But other than that, it's a lot of, I have a lot of clients that I talk with, and it's funny, I'll end up talking with parents afterwards. They're like, "What about, you talked about this? Is that true?" I'm like, "Yes." And then navigating relationships, like, you know, you have parents who are like, "I have no idea about how to, I know my kid, but I don't know about working them in relationships and how that's gonna work. It's gonna be like autism on the spectrum, or what's gonna happen?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, each person's gonna navigate things their own way, but what
Mhm.
about this? Or what about this? And what about this? So we'll talk about it." What if they're not ready to talk about it? Like, do they have anatomy? Do they understand how things work? Do they
Yeah.
understand what's going on? Did you ever talk to them about it? No. Has anyone talked to them about it?
No.
No. Has anyone talked to you about it? No.
No.
So
And even I've had some parents ask me, I'm like, "Yeah, you do need to refer to Tony on that one. I can't help you."
It's and it at first it's very odd because anytime you talk about sex, relationships, stuff like that, people get very, "Oh, no," and I've had to kind of like I'm kind of an open book on a lot of this stuff. If the person feels comfortable, we'll talk about anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I try to gauge, like, how everyone's feelings on it, and a lot of it's tough because it's very much person-centered, so it's I might have parents like, "Well, you only need to do this." I'm like, "He is an unconserved adult. If I hear you, but I also am taking very much what this person's safety is, what this
Mhm.
person's trajectory is, where they are going with their lives and what goes on. So I want to hear you. I want to hear your culture of your home, your, origins, but also realize that this is a person who is expressing their own needs and life and trying to navigate all that." So,
I like the culture of the home because the culture of the home is completely different from what is going on in these kids' heads. They're that's outside of their realm.
and understanding, family of origin versus family of choice and, how all those different interactions come into play and bringing in ABA and like, how is this reinforcing? How is this punishing? Bringing up, or we talk about this one thing or this happens, are we punishing versus reinforcing and or reinforcing, appropriately? So I've had some unique behavior plans over the years as far as like, and very unique task analyses.
Yeah. Would you say that the parents overall are, accepting of the things that you are working with them, or would you say they're hesitant?
It's each each family comes in different histories. I'll go with that. Each family has their own history. It's funny as much as like as I start working with a lot of times the kiddos, again I say kiddos, but they're adults. They are
I know.
people that excuse me as far as I don't mean to infantilize anyone. It's
No.
just how kind of used to it. So, but I'll talk about something and then I'll have parents usually end up having more questions. The kids kind of just, or the adults kind of accept it, like, "Oh, okay, that's how that works. Okay, cool." Parents are like, "Wait, what? Can you explain that again?" Or, and I'll do one-on-one sessions just with, adults, neurodivergent. I've also worked with a couple couples, both neurodivergent or neurodivergent and neurotypical,
Mm.
or again, let's be honest, we're not all completely neurotypical.
No.
So I'll bring in different aspects.
Okay.
Um, but it's interesting and bringing in multi different disciplines, ABA, ACT, ASECT, even it sounds odd, and I know I'm going to freak people out when I first say it, but bringing in some ideas from the kink community. There are some really great ideas that happen in that realm that aren't in a lot of neurotypical or vanilla type relationships. Ideas of
Mm.
consent, enthusiastic consent,
Okay.
ideas of this is my, if we're getting to like role play or describing what I'm into, clear communication of what is going to happen or what you're interested in, and then clear communication of what you'd like as far as aftercare after something happens, whether it be something more in the sexual realm or even just intimacy realm. What do I need afterwards? And being able to clearly articulate that. Do you
Mhm.
know how many vanilla couples and neurotypical don't have that type of communication and how it affects their relationships? "Hey, after we mess around, I'd really like you to, wrap me up and hold me like in a bear hug," or "Don't
Mhm.
effing touch me," or, "Draw me a bath, rub my feet and tell me I'm pretty." Whatever it is, but having a clear communication. A lot of times what happens in neurotypical relationships is he should know or she should know. And
Expectations.
the expectation kills
Mhm.
intimacy and kills
Mhm.
connection because guess what? I'm not in your head. I have no idea.
Yeah. Wow,
So,
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Huh.
and the idea of clear, enthusiastic consent, even in married long-term couples of, "Hey, I'd like to do this." "Yes, I'd like to do that too," versus, "I don't know, you're a weirdo."
Yeah.
So it's funny, a lot of the, you know, neurodivergent, very accepting. Like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense. We should get clear consent first before we before we touch or before we
Yeah.
do this. And this is what I like, and this is how I like to do it. And what do you like? And what do you like to do? And
Yeah.
and having that clear communication, because everyone else neurotypical is it's like the movies. We're just supposed to run into each other, then we roll in the waves, and everything will be perfect.
Yeah.
And
That
that
makes so much
real life
sense.
does not work out like that.
No. But they're so logical that they're like, "Yes, that absolutely, that makes complete sense to me," where we're
Yeah,
a little more illogical.
yeah. The idea of different senses, like bringing those in again. Community is very understanding as far as like, okay, deep pressure, impact,
Mhm.
role play, all these different aspects. Again,
All
I'm
the
not
things
saying
they
you have to
love.
go dress up like the Kellogg's, tiger and run around and whatever works, but it, the idea of I want to be someone else. A lot of our neurodivergent mask. So let's mask as someone else. That makes a whole lot of sense.
I like that. Ask as someone else.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a naughty librarian. I forgot to, you forgot to turn in your books on time. Whatever it is, and it's funny when I work with a lot of even neurotypical couples. They're like, we can do that. I'm like, no one's stopping
Yeah, you
you.
can do whatever you want as long as there's
Clear
consent.
consent, clear communication. Everyone's okay. Boom. Okay. Cool. Whatever works.
So, what made you want to, break out into neurotypical?
It's funny, as more that I was working in the neurodivergent realm, I had more people coming up who were neurotypical, having questions, relationship issues. Like I'm working in this realm and like explaining to like, about the individual that I'm working with, and like, well, what about if like this happens? Or what about this? And even working with a lot of parents who are like, "Hey, I'm talking about intimacy and sex and gender and all these things," and, all of a sudden mom or dad will be like, just randomly, "Well, we haven't been intimate in 4 years." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay. Uh, do you wanna talk about it?" Do something wrong? Again, the same ideas come into play of anytime there's any type of quote unquote issue is, I refer out for medical concerns. Have we ruled out this? Have we ruled out this? Have we ruled out this? And even understanding bodies in different stages of life. A lot of times working with, clients who are in their 20s and 30s, a lot of times moms are coming into their, late 40s and 50s and understanding menopause, perimenopause, and how the body changes, explaining to again women their own body it's tough because you mansplain.
Yeah.
You have erectile dysfunction too. Like,
Yeah.
hey, the bodies are very similar.
Yeah.
They're blood flow issues, intimacy issues. All these things come into play and how to navigate that. So I ended up having a lot of conversations with couples after I talked with their child would be like, well, what about this? Or hypothetically speaking, what about
If this were to
you know, and having an open space. Again, what I noticed a lot of times people would reach out to friends and family, and a lot of times people aren't educated, and it ended up increasing shame. It ended up increasing guilt, or a person is open and vulnerable about a situation that's going on, and they talk to their friends about it, and I don't know why you'd have a problem like that. It'd be like, oh, I'm different. I'm wrong. I'm over here. So,
I think there's
dealing
a
with a lot
lot
of
of guilt and
undoing
shame.
shame and guilt,
Mhm.
understanding the history of, reinforcer and punishers in a person's life, whether it be in relationships, intimacy, or many different aspects. So
Yeah.
it became very interesting to me. So I ended up working quite a bit within the neurodivergent realm and explaining how life kind of works.
Mhm.
I have clients who are like, I saw this one girl and I'm interested in, okay, what's your plan? Well, I'm going to walk up to her, look her straight in the face, make sure she turns towards me, and then I'm going to say, I like you more than as a friend. And we should go out to this restaurant and you will shall have this and I shall have this. I'm like, are they neurodivergent or neurotypical? I think they are neurotypical. I don't think that's going to work out the way you want it
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, love on the spectrum. There were a few, and I was like, "Oh," but that's how they think. It's very logical. It's very, this is that, and that's how it's going to go. So I
Mhm.
can imagine it's really helpful for them and for their parents.
Yeah.
Incredibly helpful.
Again, what about this? What if this happens again? We have a lot of parents that, live in a space of fear. And what about this? Or what, I just don't want to handle this right now, but eventually I know I have to. Or
Yeah.
this is going to become an issue. And then all of a sudden it becomes an issue. And you're like, oh, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah. Actually, that's what are some of the biggest misconceptions that families have when it comes to this?
Um, I mean, again, it's probably going to make people uncomfortable at even talking about masturbation or solo sex. I had clients who hadn't, like they're 28, 30 years old and
Mhm.
had never. And they're like, well, watching pornography is wrong. I'm like, well, do you need pornography? I mean, and usually at that point, especially in males, there's at least some sort of like nocturnal missions that's happening, but there's not an idea of solo sex or this for pleasure. And then even more so getting into the female realm of, and again, a lot of women, especially clients, don't feel comfortable talking to a guy about this, but yes, the idea of self pleasure and how safe ways of doing it and safe appropriate ways, and you know there's not a whole lot of people to talk to. It's usually like,
Yeah.
we don't do that.
Yeah.
Versus like, well, I
Like
do that. That
juries.
I again, let's talk about cleanliness. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about have families are like, okay, let's talk about, like lubrication. And they're like, I don't use lubrication. That he shouldn't have to either. I'm like, okay, you ever hurt yourself before? Had a little bit of rug burn or anything else like that happen? Too vigorous? Well, yeah. Well, lube might have helped out with that.
I feel like guilt and shame just keeps coming in when comments are made like that that parents have. It bleeds into the conversation with the kids.
Yeah, it usually becomes like, I'm sensing projection. I'm going we have some more work to do if you're comfortable talking about it. Um, no, it's other preconceived notions. I don't know. It's I've had to deal with all kinds of different situations, especially I had a mom who had to set up dates and tried to set up dates for her son, and it was incredibly awkward. And um I don't know. I can't get into very much detail because it's a
Sure.
small world, but
Mhm.
it is incredibly interesting work, and it's fun for me. I get paid to talk about sex, and a lot of times it's funny because we'll talk like, here's this one client would be like, hey, we come in, we're here to talk about sex and intimacy. We talk about it for like this much, and then
Yeah.
it's like everything else in life.
Under the
How
sun.
do I handle this? Or what are my values? And how do I deal when I do something outside of my values? Or I keep on doing this and I'm ashamed about it. And okay, how do we undo that? How do we work on finding getting you to the point where you're getting reinforcement for doing things that align with your values?
Yeah.
What are your values? How do we find those out?
Yeah, how do they know?
Yeah, this is what I do. Okay, are you happy about that? Does it work out for you? Well, no.
Yeah.
Would you like to change it? Would you like some help changing it?
Mhm. I think
So,
too that boys in this community, it's more like okay that we talk about private time with boys, but girls, it's more taboo. Like, don't talk about it.
yeah,
Don't, you know? Why do you think that is? I know they're less of
again,
the community, but
part of it is community, part of it is just cultural. Again, in Western culture, women having pleasure with sex has been associated with sluttiness. And if they enjoy sex, they're going to go out and they're going to have sex with all kinds of people. Then they'll get pregnant, and then there'll be babies everywhere.
yeah.
This slippery slope argument versus, oh, wait a second, if this person now understands pleasure, understands that, hey, sex is both intimacy, but also solo sex as far as in how to have that pleasure, and
Mm.
you get release of oxytocin, you get release of dopamine, you can study out a sleep schedule, you can help out with stress. um it can be incredibly helpful and healthy, and understanding that how to reach that by yourself. A lot of women get into relationships, especially in strong religious cultures, never having any idea of how their body works.
Yeah.
I've been anytime this feels good, I've been told that's wrong. So, but now it's okay with this person.
Yeah, suddenly, one day later, it's okay.
And then you're supposed to like flip the switch.
Mhm.
Okay, I am pure and innocent. No, I'm not. I have this on a ring on my finger. That means, with this person. So, and then understanding like, hey, there's even getting to again, it's sometimes a very strong cultural stuff as far as within the religious community, and the neurodivergent can be very similar. There's been no experience and they've been shamed for any type of behavior in this realm
Mm.
for the last 20, 30 years. Then all of a sudden, now it's okay. Figure it all out. It should be perfect.
Yeah. And I find it so, black and white. My nephew, Kemi, had her hand in on her back and, like, her finger had got, like, gone a little bit down her pants in the back, and he says, "Oh, Kemi, you need to go to your room for private time. You don't do that in public," And she's like, "Oh, thank you, bud," but, like, it's so black and white. It was just one tiny thing, and he was like, "Oh, no, no, no,"
We don't
so
do that here.
we don't do that here,
But
but
I mean, it's someone has had some history there.
yes, yep, yep.
If hands go in pants, go private time.
That's
Boom,
right.
boom, boom, boom.
Go to
Hey,
room.
that's worked. And
Yeah.
obviously, there might have been some times where maybe that, didn't happen. But
Mhm.
and again, he wanted to make sure she didn't come into contact with punishment in any way either. So
Yes,
it's
he
just way of
was
showing that he
working
cared.
hard. Yeah, it was really sweet. He was looking out for her.
Yeah, but again, that might be a whole one. Like, do we understand how female anatomy works?
Yeah.
Might be the next question.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you have any female clients or have you?
I have worked only in tandem. So I've worked with a couple clients with, usually another professional there too. It just sometimes I feel more comfortable.
Sure, I
I've
get
worked because I present as very cis male beard. Why would a 40-year-old man want to talk to a 20-year-old girl about sex? Like,
yeah.
oh God, I could be professional. Oh God,
Yeah.
Again, throwing some logic out there of like being a guy, I have probably seen more vaginas than you have as a female. You've seen one, just throwing that out there.
So how can parents start to approach this and when? When would be the best time for parents to? Because it's like you said, everything is so taboo. "Oh, let's not talk about that. I'm not ready yet." Or, if they do anything in public, it's like, "Oh, oh, no, no, no." So what would you recommend to parents?
Well, it depends. It's tough on the Western model of kind of medicine, and this is where a lot of psychology comes from. It usually stems from pathology. So there's like got to be a problem first. Um, I prefer it'd be like, hey, if there's education that when is appropriate time to talk about body parts. 5 and 6 years old is basic understanding of body parts. If there's some sort of communication, even identifying at that young, what are, you know, bikini area or swimming suit areas
Mm,
can help understanding of this is me and doctors and, can see, but no one else
yeah,
could also prevent, possibility of abuse.
sure.
Because again, they just don't have an understanding there.
Yeah, they're vulnerable.
So I'd say just, you kind of follow as much, the kind of typical protocol of usually even 5, 6. I've talked with my children at 5 and 6 of it identifying body parts. And it's tough. It's tough even being a parent of I come up with, familial names for different body parts. Like that's your peenie, that's your hoo-ha. It's like the problem with that is not everyone understands that nomenclature, and let's say if something were to happen, you run into, going to see a doctor or trying to explain, if something did happen, you're using terms that not everyone else understands. And it's tough to look at a 5-year-old and go, "That is your penis.
Yeah.
That is your clitoris. Shall we lay, the difference between your labia majora and your labia minora?"
Yeah.
It feels incredibly awkward, but and even the difference of like the most common thing of at least with females, the difference between vulva and vagina.
Yeah. I think
Vulva is on the outside, vagina
some
is on
30-year-old woman wouldn't know that.
the So again, I know as soon as I said vulva, like half the audience, if they're watching, you, ooh,
I know. Even you and me were like, "Oh, what are people thinking?"
yo, he said the B word.
So from your perspective, how does emotional safety and regulation play a role in healthy relationships and boundaries?
Okay, so again, this is a fun one, even in running into neurotypical and neurodivergent, of understanding of some of the biggest problems that can happen in relationships when a regulation is required on the other partner. So, especially in longer term relationships, it can feel very much connected of like, hey, when I'm stressed, you calm me down. But long term, when one person is responsible for regulating the emotional state of two people, it can be incredibly exhausting. Same thing can happen, whether it be partners, as far as a romantic relationship, but even in family systems, where parents are now responsible for helping a person regulate into their 20s and 30s is incredibly exhausting too.
Mhm.
So a lot of work I do is even using some of the actins, how to self-regulate, how to work on our reactions to situations, how to handle stress. um, it's not even today. I'll be honest, I had a situation. I was in the car with my kids. I was on my way here. I was answering an email, which I shouldn't have done because I was driving. And then had a phone call, and then my kids are fighting over a soda. And it like literally my brain went too much. And I like grabbed the soda and threw it down and was like, hold on. And
You were
had to
human?
stop. What?
You were human?
I was human. Again, behavior analysts have to be perfect all the time. We are
That's right.
not. We are parents too, and I'm a person too, and I have my moments. I did say after I regulated myself down, I did like, "Hey guys, I was overwhelmed and I reacted poorly there." And it was funny because it opened up a conversation where my, 7-year-old and my 5-year-old like, "Dad, we've been overwhelmed before too. Can we help you with this situation? We can help make it better." I'm like, "No, guys, I got it." What was inappropriate was in that time, I reacted very like I was upset. It
Mhm.
wasn't your fault. Now, did you add to the situation when you know you shouldn't have? Yes. But hey, here's how I should have acted. I'd like to apologize to you. Let's see if we can't work together in the future. Yeah, dad, sometimes when I get upset, I do this. Or, it's like now you're getting counseling from a 5-year-old. So, but no, yeah, I'm incredibly human. I mess up all the time. And that's a crazy thing of like getting in BCBAs. You have the most well-behaved children. Like they're are halfway across the barrel. Um, but they're wonderful little human beings that
Yeah.
they are cute. That's why they continue to survive.
They are adorable. I like how you touched though on regulation of the adults. I think that I've found that some of the kids that have been the most dysregulated, it's the parents and the kids are feeling that dysregulation, and it just is a cycle and they can't break out of it because mom or dad is massively dysregulated, which I don't blame them. I've sometimes I've been remember going home from a house and thinking, I'm so lucky I get to go home and close the
Oh,
door and then walk away from this, you know?
no, especially with multiple diagnoses or multiple physical issues or multiple children within a home where you have
Multiple children, yeah.
now you're one parent who's trying to regulate 2 or 3 children and a spouse.
And it's
And a spouse.
it's
And
exhausting.
it yes, and but the problem is that sometimes it's this feeding thing too of I have a purpose. I have a purpose because I do this, and this is how I know that I'm needed and I'm wanted is because I fulfill this role, but this role is also exhausting, and maybe I'm not suited to meet this role, and other people have it more easier, and so then we have what's called the spiral, and where rumination happens, anxiety happens, depression happens, all these things where there isn't an outlet or there isn't a way to safely regulate, a person who's trying to regulate everyone else.
Yeah. What does healthy independence look like for these kids?
I can't answer that because every kid has a different need level. There are some, again, say kids, but I don't mean to infantilize. I have several clients that are going to have 24-hour support for the rest of their lives. I have other ones where they drive. They are mostly independent. They are living their lives and, with some check-ins. So healthiness really looks at the person's competency, capacity, their interactions, their ability to grow, to meet the needs, and what the environment is. Um, we as adults, or at least I count myself as a somewhat functioning adult. uh, You know, we set up our supports and our systems that work, and we get by. Um, are we ever going? How much of that independence happens is depends on that individual completely. I know typical adults who still live in their parents' basements, so
Yeah.
it's hard to say. Well, this is what's healthy and this is what's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's going to be finding out where they're at and how do we keep moving forward.
Okay.
I think that's the toughest thing is when things
Momentum.
become stagnant of this is where we are and this is how things are gonna be and this is how it's gonna be forever. As much as you just say there's, I'm afraid of change. Change happens whether you like it or not.
Yeah. That's so true. So, what would be the biggest thing that you would want families to understand most about this, about what you do?
Um, that we can have open conversations. It's funny working within the neurodivergent realm. I tend to be a lot more blunt, especially in certain situations. And it's just from working with clients for so long that require that amount of bluntness. Like trying to hem and haw about a situation is just confusing and takes forever. And so, and to be very blunt, I was working with a party with my kids and the parent that I identified the child as, neurodivergent. Maybe the parents had not quite identified their child as neurodivergent, but I, went up and talked like, "Hey, is this kind of stuff you're kind of seeing at home? And this is what's going on?" And they just look at me like, how did you know that? You just basically described my entire life in like 30 seconds as far as what's going on. I'm like, it's pretty clear what kind of systems are happening. Do you have these supports in place? There are supports like that in place. I mean, there are supports like that available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, take me to the promised land. It was I don't know, I wish families, like, would be open to growth, open to seeing what each kid is capable of doing, or again, I keep on saying kids, I know I'm gonna get if this was on, some sort of, like,
I do the same
comments
thing.
underneath, he get done saying kids, he infantilizes everyone.
Yeah.
No, I say it as, you know connection. Give me a chance to work with a kiddo and someone or adult and have some open dialogues and see what happens. Again, I think one of the other things is me presenting. I'm 6'2", 270-pound bearded man,
Yeah.
um, and people look at me like I expect a certain amount of behaviors from you, or some type of behaviors just in my physical appearance.
Yeah.
Versus we're like, hey, if you really want to talk about this stuff, I'm ready and open to talk about all different aspects. And if I don't know, I'll find out for you and we'll find out together.
Yeah. So your sessions, are they all in person? Are they through Zoom?
All
What
through
do
Zoom.
they all
Pretty
look
much I
like?
do everything through Zoom. One, it allows me to have a note taker available. I record everything, but we're talking about very sensitive conversations. It would probably be very odd for me to like walk into a family. So I'm here to talk about masturbation with your child. I'll
Yeah.
be in the room with the closed door.
I know. I thought about that. That was why it was a valid
Boy,
question. I was like, I
come into
wonder.
my office, little one. We're going to, no, no, yeah, icky. Um, I've had some more like group talks, stuff like that. Sounds odd when you start talking about sex, but I've had some group discussions. No, it's mostly over Zoom. And again, I love technology. I have a note taker. It lets me do action plans. It lets me come up with behavior plans. Lets me keep track of everything because I
Yeah.
tend to just talk. And then later I'm like, did I mention this? Did they give me data? No, it's all through Zoom. Um, I don't like, a couple times I've done some stuff in person, but it's not going to be very sexually based, especially anything
Sure.
very personal. Won't be talking about. It might be some family dynamics, maybe, but even then, it's sometimes it's easier to do it over Zoom because people
Yeah.
tend to, well, I'd like to meet you in person. I'd like to do this. I'm like, Yeah, I'm talking about relationships, and I might have to tell you, like, "Hey, I'm seeing that this dynamic is not really working for you in your home as you serve me tea. I'd rather be comfortable in my office," as we talked about some of this stuff.
Sure. So for anybody watching this, how would they contact you?
I am in the process of setting up a whole new website. Again, you gotta love this world where I had done a lot of this stuff through my behavioral company, Achieve Behavioral, until
Mhm.
my liability insurance called me up and says, "We heard you're talking about sex with people with special
Oh.
needs." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, that's what I do. That we're from Ohio, and that's so weird, and we don't feel comfortable doing your liability insurance anymore." So I've had to move. I'm in the process of moving everything over. The company I'm right now, again, I still have to finish up EIN and everything else, is Behavioral Strategy Group,
Okay.
and that's gonna be I got a couple different names and, as far as relationships and sex and neurodivergent and all these other things,
Mm.
and I'm like, I as much as I talk about sex and intimacy, it's not like here, I'm not pigeonholed in this area. I like
Yeah.
talking about the individual as a whole and the
Mhm.
systems at play and the
Mm.
interactions with different things. So I tried to kind of expand that out. So
Yeah,
um
you have a vast knowledge in so many areas. I when you blow me away in some of the things, I'm like, "Oh, yeah." So I can see why you went with that. That makes more sense.
and most of my stuff I do private pay, most of through the self-determination program, just because a lot of the stuff isn't covered by insurance. Even under ABA, it gets very excuse the pun, but sticky.
Mhm.
Bec- hey, I get to make all kinds of puns. I'm in this field. But it can be very confusing. And it's funny because I've done peer reviews with other clinicians on insurances and like, oh, this is really needed. And how would you do this? And how would you do that? And I had a client who did this and I ended up, going off on tangents about, this field and how it's different and how to do behavior support plans for this very specific behavior. But then they're like, yeah, but my insurance company won't cover that.
Yeah.
So it kind of falls into the kind of parent ed slash ABA slash adaptive skill slash executive functioning kind of realm within
Mm.
the kind of SDP program
Yeah.
because it kind of hits in all those different areas in
Mhm.
different amounts depending on the individual.
Sure. That makes sense.
Because again, a lot
Oh,
of it, decision making. Have we
yeah.
made poor decisions in the past? That's executive functioning.
Yeah.
They just
Um, I know your oh wait, what's your email address? Can people contact you through that? Would you prefer that or not?
Sure, Tony Kibler at gmail.com right now. I'm a little ADHD and I have several projects kind of going. I got a couple stuff working with the SDP program. I'm big into building systems. I like building systems, completing systems, fixing systems. And that can be people, that can be computers, that can be applications or how people use all these different things.
Mm.
So I got a couple different ideas happening in several different realms. So
That was my
trying
next
to
question. I know
go
you're
for
a
it.
big entrepreneur. I know you're cutting edge in our field. Was there anything else you wanted to share with us, or is it all still in the works?
Got a couple things in the works, but some of the stuff I'm working on right now is helping other vendors such as myself get into the whole SDP realm. So I got a website that I'm working on. It's called Path to Vendor. Still not quite set up yet, but kind of details out how to become a vendor within the field of self-determination. Because what I was finding was like I knew how to do it, and then I'd find these mistakes or this or that, but no one had the clear steps of how to do it.
No.
It's like, hey, you could be OT, you could be speech, you could be music, you could be this, or you could be that. And there's hundreds of families, if not thousands of families, who are looking for people to do all kinds of different things. And there wasn't a way for those people to get into the STP field.
Yeah, to
I
connect.
then was like, okay, once we become vendors, how do we find them? Oh, gonna need a website, connect to vendors where we can basically have a searchable engine to be able to look and find different people within the realm. Great, awesome, cool. Once they become vendors, how are they going to do their scheduling? Oh, I got to work on a website called SDP-vendor so we can have possibly scheduling. All these things aren't they're websites, but they're not fully built as far as apps. And then how to bring them all together. And then on top of it, working another thing is with working with both neurotypical and neurodivergent couples, how to navigate intimacy and there's a great book called Sensate Focus by Laura Weiner. Again, it looks like Wiener. It's funny, but it's Weiner. Taking
Got
off the
it.
Matthews
Weiner.
and Johnson study of, okay, when couples have difficulty with intimacy, whether it be interactions, expectations, performance issues, all these things of how to rebuild intimacy and physical intimacy in a relationship, there's actually a very kind of clear steps that have been clinically proven to make that happen. So, working on an application right now for solo couples or even possibly polyamorous or multifaceted relationships to navigate those steps in a safe, secure kind of path. So you could have an app where you and your partner log in and like, hey, here's our first step. We're going to have this type of session where we're not having sex or having anything like that. It's just literally, I touch you. Are you okay with me touching you and you being okay with physical contact? And then am I okay with your physical contact with me and logging how that works? And there are two separate kind of journal articles, journal entries where you would enter in one, your partner would enter in another, and AI or a clinician would help determine what your next session should look like with prompts, and then build from there back into physical intimacy where, hey, you actually enjoy being around your partner. You actually enjoy them touching. You look forward to it again, rather than it's a chore or I have to perform or this other things are going on.
It's promoting connection.
Yes. So it's called Sensate Focus. And I'm actually have a working on the app with the one of the directors over ASECT, and the head of the program is for the sexual behavior analysis and certified behavior sexologist. He's like, this is needed. I want to, I'm like, I could do it. I'm super busy with all these other things, but okay, that's me.
I got a little sneak peek Tony was showing me the other day, and it's gonna be not the Sensate, but the other one. It's gonna be really helpful. I think a lot of people struggle connecting with the right people, and there's nothing out there right now. There's nothing you're just lucky if you have a good independent facilitator
Mhm.
to
And
help
even
you.
there, like I had, I'm working on a CRM for independent facilitators because they work with 21 different regional centers and like 20 different FMSs and how many different vendors, and each one uses their own paperwork and their own form, and
Their own
it's so
style.
confusing to manage these different things. And there's no product out there that says how to work within a realm of like, hey, this is the actual client, but these are their caregivers. And are they conserved? Are they not conserved? What regional center are they with? What FMS are they with? Well, who are their vendors? And how are all these things fit together? And how do we determine a budget?
Yeah,
So
you're gonna
got pulled
such a
into doing
headache.
a
You're
project there
fixing it.
too. Yeah. Yeah. Do another Coke. Mm. So I'd love to say like, hey, all these things are going to be amazing and they're going to be great. They might not work out. They might be like, hey, we go down a path and we say, hey, this isn't going to work out. We're going to let someone else kind of take over. Okay, cool. But I'm one of those people who like, hey, I see this as a need, and it's so tough for me not to go like, I could do this.
Yeah. I remember when you first told me you were taking the classes and I was like, for to become a sexologist, and I was like, "Huh." And now look at you and listening to you talk about it, I think it's amazing. I think it's going to open up so many doors that have just been slammed closed and locked 6 times over because
And
like what you
it,
said, there's so much shame and guilt that we just don't wanna talk about it when we need to do it, and I think this goes for neurotypical families as well. I think it's
it's be ama like, I've got pulled into I just talk with people. I'm one of those people that I'll just start talking. I like talking with people, and I've had situations neurotypical where, like, talking with, again, 40-something-year-old guy, and he's like, "Well, this is what's going on in my life." I'm like, "Have you tried this?" And he give you the steps on Sensei Focus, and, like, gave me a text later like, "You are an effing legend, man. Like, it, like, rebuilt our relationship, and I didn't know women, like, experience intimacy so differently, and I had no idea I was every time I, like, ran by her and, like, squeezed her butt and whatever else, and I was causing messes in the house, she was, viewing me like a kid rather than a partner and as a man, and this has, like, changed our whole relationship." I'm just like, "Huh, cool.
yeah.
I have a purpose."
You have a purpose.
I found my
You have a
special
lot of
purpose.
purposes, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest, Tony.
Yeah, I gotta work on finding assistants and finding good people to kinda help out where I can go, "Okay, I've reached my limit for today. I just yelled at my children over a Coke."
Yeah.
Um,
We've all been there, though. All
yeah,
goodness.
and again, not perfect, and as much as I would never say, like, "This is the I know the best way." I'm like, I'm still figuring out a lot of this stuff myself.
Anyone that knows you knows that, Tony.
Thank you
You're
that I'm not perfect. Awesome.
no,
Thank you
that
for
you're
that.
true blue. You are who you are, and you're okay with it, which is a great thing to have, rather than being fake and putting off a persona that isn't you.
Yeah, I don't wanna be sitting in an office, behind me that little notebook like, "No, tell me about your mother." Mm, it
And I think
like,
too
let's
with
let's
your
figure out what
clients,
works.
that's what
What's the
they're
problem? How do we fix it? And
yeah,
is it even a problem?
yeah, and I think that's what I can imagine you get people to be very relaxed, and I imagine your clients that you give them that peace to where they feel safe.
Yeah, I think it's not that hard. It's like, again, I guess you guys act less than professional and sometimes, in the appropriate ways without transference or counter-transference or anything else. But no, it's again, I think genuinely enjoying seeing people grow too, um, and progress in life and change. How can you not enjoy that aspect?
Yeah. But it's a gift that you have, I feel like not everybody has that to be able to,
It was a
uh
gift from trauma. No.
yeah. Yes, I'm very
Thanks,
familiar with that
trauma.
gift.
It's what I really wanted, to hear other people's problems and be okay with it all day long. No.
But you turn that into your superpower, which is
It's
amazing.
at least it's better than, popping a whole bunch of Zoloft. So
Tony, it was so great chatting with you today, and is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
again, I like the idea of again, I like to incorporate the whole act aspect. It's not just your problem. And I think that's actually if you answer your question from earlier in a lot better way is what do you wish people could see or know? Is if you've had a kiddo that's again, say kiddo, had a client that's had ABA and all these other services, and they've been told that they're the problem for so long, it's not always that. Sometimes it's a system at play that we need to work on as a whole. Mom, dad, grandma, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, how these all things fit together rather than just fix him. If we fix him, everything will be okay. It no, that doesn't
It'll
always
never
work
be
like that.
okay.
And we could get them doing great in this environment, but the home environment is a completely different. So what I wish is people stop pointing fingers at other people and saying you're the problem
Some
or
inner
fix this
reflection.
problem with him or her or it or them.
It's about connection,
Yeah.
and you have to connect in order to start solving and understanding behaviors.
Yeah. And eventually even realizing they're adults. Like they're gonna come a point where okay, they're gonna find stuff online or they're gonna see this or they're gonna have that or they're gonna have questions or they're gonna have adult questions.
Mm. And let it be okay.
Yeah. And be happy. If they're having adult questions, it means that they're continuing to progress.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tony, for being here.
No
This was so
problem.
amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. Hopefully, again, some families find some different avenues, whether it's not with me, I think there's now 19 or 20 other people who have this certification in the world.
The world.
So,
I
yeah,
forgot. I wanted to ask because I remember when I talked to you before, there was very little.
I
So
think
19, 20 people.
I was number 20, and that is like a couple, 6 months ago or something like that. And then there's even less CBSCs. I am not sure, but I probably, if I graduate in the timing wise, I'll probably be in the top 10,
Wow. You're a
if not
pretty
top
guy,
5.
Tony.
So, along with all these other projects, I just finished up 30 CUs and I got to do 90 credit hours of supervised field work to kind of get to this next phase. So,
Wow. Well, good
keep
luck.
on staying busy.
Can't wait to see where you go from here.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
All right.